Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me this evening is a phenomenal woman that I had the opportunity to recently connect with across social media lines. She is a writer, she's an author, she's a speaker, a natural born storyteller, but most important, she's a woman of God, and she's taking time out of a very busy schedule to hang out with us this evening. To share a little bit about her journey, to share a little bit of her story with the hopes of encouraging and inspiring and uplifting others, especially as it deals with the challenges and struggles that we all go through with dealing with the obstacles of life and how to properly face those things in a healthy and a productive way. So it is my privilege and honor, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you this evening our very special guest, Miss Sandra Walters. Sandra, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. It is an honor to be here. Um,
Oh,
I
that's
used to be
awesome. That's
very
awesome.
quiet, so the deal of being on a podcast where I am talking about my story, I used to be so afraid. Story. Um, One of the reasons is because I am from Fort Worth, Texas, and I grew up in the hood. I ended up in the suburbs after I graduated from college, and I really didn't want people to know who I really was. And I thought that if they knew, they would be like, "Goodness, what is on here?" So I knew how to be very surface.
Well, I mean, that's again, that's not a bad thing. Like I said, being a quiet person, I know myself growing up quiet. Again, never would imagined in the earlier days of life doing something like this, being in front of a microphone, being on stages and platforms, speaking and doing various things that I like. Just totally opposite of what I was like coming up, but. It's kind of one of those things, and you probably can relate to it. It's like it's something that you always maybe had wanted to do. You just never saw yourself, being out there like that, and in such a upfront way, and being vulnerable and transparent. But it's always an opportunity when you can do something like that to be a blessing to other people, and that's why it's important sometimes for us to kind of step outside of our comfort zones and stretch ourselves accordingly, like I know you've done, and I've had to do some of the same things to kind of grow and take it to that next level and walking in our purpose. So so with that said, Sandra, I'm not gonna hold up anymore. We want to learn more about your story. So, one of the things that everybody that comes on the show, I always talk about this is, I really believe it's important for us to take a moment to reflect back on the beginnings of where our story starts, because a lot of times there's people that we encounter along the way as far back as childhood. There's incidents and circumstances that happen along the way that it doesn't always make sense at the time that it's going on. But as you get older, as you experience more of life and all that it has to offer, good, bad, or otherwise, you begin to sort of connect the dots, put the pieces together, and it begins to, in its own natural way, begins to start to make sense as to this is why I had to go through this. This is why I had to encounter this person. This is why this situation was the way that it was. It was all leading up to a ultimate moment of me walking in the purpose that God created for me to be. So with that said, if you would, I'd like to take a few moments to kind of delve into the beginning of your story. I know you said, "Hey, I grew up in Fort Worth, grew up in the hood." Just kind of tell us in general, like, what was it like for you growing up? Fond memories that you have about growing up, as well as, again, if there was any challenges that come to mind that you'd like to share, you can do that as well. Kind of give us the backdrop of where your story begins.
So my story began with my mom keeping me a secret. My mom was pregnant for 9 months and nobody knew,
Mm,
which I think only 4'8", and she was 4'11". And so she went all the way through being pregnant with Bill. Her water broke. Her water broke in front of her sister, and her sister was like, "Oh my gosh, what is going on?" And so then her sister helped clean things up, packed her bags. She called a cab down the street at the payphone because she walked to the corner store to call the cab to take her to John Peter Smith Hospital. And she's walking and, praying does not have the baby. She's with the baby's me while she's walking down the street. So she went to the hospital, had me, and nobody knew she's pregnant. So then they ended up eventually going to the hospital to her and, of course, see me. And so that is the beginning of my story. So for me, growing up, though, I always kind of thought, hmm, I don't know if I here because I was a
Mm.
secret. And so I was like, well, I don't think anybody was really happy about me being there. Um, and so eventually I also learned that I was the product of an affair. My mom got pregnant with me. She actually told me that my dad told her she was pregnant before she even knew. But asked him, what do you think I should do? And he said, go ahead and have the baby. Praise the Lord. Um, but has always been hard for me. So when birthdays would come around for me, it would be like, mm, because I just didn't feel that happy when I came. And my grandmother did not like my father, which makes sense, not married to my mom. And so because of that, she didn't like me.
Hmm.
So, beginning of my story, um, I just always, wondered about, there are always shows with moms and dads. So I was
Mm-hmm.
just wondering where mine was and who was I looked like him. I don't know anything about him. And how could someone have a child and never to even meet them or do anything for them? So all of that was very interesting to me. But as I
Wow.
said, I grew up little thinking, what in the heck is going on here? I was questioning everything as a little kid. Like, of course, we knew better than to say out loud.
Mm-hmm.
I just started as a little kid.
Wow. Um, well, let me first off by start off by saying I appreciate your transparency and sharing that. I think the first thing that jumped out at me is the fact that you said you were 4'8". I don't know if I didn't envision you being that short. I've seen your pictures online and everything, but it's like, wow, you're 4'8", and you
Mm-hmm.
said your mom was 4'11". Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think the other thing that immediately jumped out at me is when you talk about your mom. One, your mom, being able to actually conceal the fact that she was even pregnant for the entirety of her pregnancy, and being that small and nobody like noticing it. I think I find that to be interesting. I'm like how she was even able to navigate that. Um, and then of course something personal that resonated with me was the fact that you made mention that your mom that you were a product of an affair, and the reason why that resonates with me is because I too was a product of an affair. And so when you spoke about what that feels like when you are, when you come into the world that way. One, how do people look at that? How do you feel as the child? Like, I did have the pleasure of actually knowing my dad, but there were still, limitations, because to same way with your
Mm-hmm.
situation, he was a married man. He had a family, and I have siblings,
Mm-hmm.
that I don't have a relationship with. And so when you go through something like that, for anybody that's tuning in, that are in that type of situation, it can there can be a sense of isolation, some, a sense of you feeling like you're the, you're on the outside looking in, so to speak, that you're the forgotten one. And so when you were talking about how you just like felt like, here was your mom keeping you as a secret by way of the, not letting anybody know about the pregnancy. But then even after you're born and growing up, you still feel like, like you're still like a living secret. Like nobody wants to know about me, nobody's interested in me, nobody cares about me. So any kid that grew up like that, whether it was because of being a product of an affair or just simply being a part of a family that mom and dad weren't in the house together, and that other parent, in this case the dad, just wasn't actively around, to the point where you don't even know, like you said, do I look like him, do I behave like him, if there's any is there anything about him that I can identify with. I can only imagine how difficult that must be. And there are a lot of people who grow up like that and not knowing that other parent, and it's an unfortunate situation that even despite how you arrived into this world, a child should not still have to go through life not having a relationship or a connection to his or her parents, even if those two parents are
Mm-hmm.
not together. So again, I do appreciate you sharing that, because unfortunately, it's a very common conversation that we oftentimes
Mm-hmm.
hear, and it can have traumatic impact on people. There,
Mm-hmm.
there, there are men and women in this world today, 40, 50, 60 years old, still dealing with the traumas of that, from what took place early on in childhood, not having that, be in a situation where there's an absentee dad, or in some cases an absentee mom, and feeling that
Mm-hmm.
sense of abandonment, if you will. So appreciate you sharing that. So, so Sandra, again, you've kind of given us the backdrop of how it all starts for you, and and again, but yet nevertheless, you make it through into adulthood, and and you talked about going off to college, and ultimately transitioning from the hood, so to speak, to the suburb life and all that good stuff. But one of the things that we
Mm-hmm.
also learn as we get older is the experiences and the challenges continue to come, and in fact, in some instances they tend to elevate, and in some instances those storms, those encounters that we have in life can come across our way in a manner that we might find ourselves on occasion or two in a season of life facing a situation that seems insurmountable, seems to be impossible to overcome, a challenge that our money can't make go away, a challenge that our degrees can't make go away, a challenge that we can't pick up the phone and make a call and it goes away. We sometimes in life, you live long enough, you're going to be in the midst of a storm that it's just you and that storm, and you don't have an answer for it, and you don't know what to do. You feel like giving up, you feel like just throwing your hands up in the air. So with that said, Sandra, if you would tell us about a time that you felt just like that you were facing a situation in life that you didn't see a way out, you didn't know how you were going to overcome it, you didn't know what was going to be the outcome, but thanks to God's grace and mercy, you were able to navigate and work your way through it, and you're here today to actually share that story. So if you would kind of walk us through what was that situation like for you, and what was ultimately the turning point when you began to see some light at the end of the tunnel and coming out of that situation.
Well, growing up, my mom and so as a little kid, she was a single mom of two girls. Um, she started kind of going out clubbing, things like that. Be at our grandma's house, and she starts drinking, and then she decides that she wants to take it. So it started, I was maybe 5, 6, and she would just ask her, could you go? And my grandmother would tell her it was okay for her to go. She wanted to go because of how she said. But I don't think she felt like she could actually tell her no. So as a little girl, remember crying. And when it got for her to actually leave out the door, I remember running and like legs and, not her to go, just like, any little kid, but she would go anyway. And so, kid, I learned that I had to take care of myself. even at such a young age. Is only 15 months older than me, but my sister knew how to do my hair. Like when she was probably 7, she would be doing my hair,
Hmm.
putting them in ponytails. And there were times where our mom would leave us at home alone and she would go to the club. And we didn't know when she was coming back. We didn't know if the police come and say that she's dead. That was our normal. I remember going to school one day and she left me on a Friday. She still had when it was time for school to start Monday. But we learned how to wash our own clothes. We learned how to feed ourselves, and that was 5 or 7 years old. Um, at that age, I already knew I needed some help. I mean, back then, at school we would do the moment of silence, and I was praying, and I didn't know a thing, but I would be praying because I knew my grandmother lived like around the corner. It's the neighbor across the street, and called her. She didn't even. And we were there by ourselves, little kids. She didn't come.
Hmm.
So anyway, early on that I needed God. I didn't know how the whole God thing worked, but I knew it would help because I knew that I wasn't necessarily going to get it from her or from my family.
Wow. So, with that said, being your mom, like you said, is out doing her thing. You and your sister at home, basically functioning independently, not really having the support from the outside. Whether it be family, or neighbors or what have you. Um, how were you able to how were you able to ultimately navigate childhood as a whole, and make it to the level like you said, you mentioned earlier, I went to college, like, and because on paper you hear a situation like this and then you think to yourself, well, how
Mm-hmm.
does college happen? How does the stages and platforms that you're on today happen if this is where
Okay.
you were, if this was the environment that you had to encounter and had to endure. Kind of walk us through, what does that journey look like as you're making it through childhood and ultimately into adulthood, and and that ultimate breakout moment where you find your voice, where you find your place in life, where you no longer feel like the secret anymore.
Okay. So mom had a sugar daddy. So the sugar daddy, I loved him. He was like the daddy I didn't have. He was so much older that my mom started dating this other man. And so I knew she would be leaving and she would spend like days, weeks with this other man. So eventually he packed up all of our stuff and took us to our grandmother's. And so he took us, dropped us off. For me, that was my nightmare. But anyways, because other people's big mamas are different from me. And so I'm thinking,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm going to live here with her. She doesn't like me. But change was we had these friends that lived down the street, Cooney and Tina. And Cooney and Tina went to church. And Cooney and Tina, um, they had their church had a carnival, and she came back. Cooney came back with cake all over her shirt, and I was like, I want to go to that church because I want some cake. Okay. I don't like cake like that, but anyone wanted some cake. The church said like it was fun. I knew that I needed God. We had been visiting churches close to where we were, but they seemed weird, even though I wasn't a Christian. It's off about them. Anyways, so we went to World Missionary Baptist Church, and when we got there, they just seemed so happy. They seemed happy I was there. They were introducing me to everybody. And I was like, oh, wow, they have something else. And, they, I loved church music because it was hope, there was hope in the words. And I did not know how to join or what like a Christian was. Um, So I just sat there and I just watched quiet and I'm observing, watch people and watch things. And so I was like, these people are different. I want what they have. I did not walk down to give life at join the invitation that first time. I went to school the next week and all I thought about was church. And all I thought was, I'm going to accept the Lord when I go back next week. And so before they can even pull the chair, I was down there and I went into the pulpit and sat in the pastor's chair. And he was so sweet, so kind. And he was like, Usher's gonna bring her a chair. Like when people were at church and when they have the invitation and people don't come down, like what? I ran down because I knew that I needed God and I could see hope. I could see hope at the church. And they were sweet. I was like, I don't even know these people. And they're sweeter than my family to me.
Hmm.
So for me, it was pretty much a no brainer. And we started going to church like it was a seminary. So, you know, we didn't have extracurricular. My kids, I played sports for them. We were going to church. We were going to Bible study, BTU, all the things. We did all of it. In the choir, I want solo. I wanted to do all the things. So we were at church like activity, extracurricular activity. And the pastor and his wife, they just took us in. Whenever it was Thanksgiving, if it was, they would to their house. And I don't know, you probably know what this is. I thought they lived in a community that looked like Knots Landing. And so I love I love their house, because they had a house, whereas apartments. So I could see what happens when you have a relationship with God and how it's different. It was very clear to me.
Wow. Well, what I'm hearing in what you just shared is going to church, that your first experience was, it was like you felt a sense of community, a sense of family for the first time. Again, you talked about being a secret, and even to your sister, like you two were just kind of isolated off to yourselves, and the people that should have been there weren't there. But then you go into this place, which initially is a place full of strangers, but you're immediately treated like family. You're immediately feeling a love that you were thirsting for a long time, and probably didn't even realize how much you were until you actually felt what it was like. But it was God's presence in that house. It was God's people in that house
Hmm.
embracing you, saying, "Hey, come with us. We're good. Let me introduce you to the other members of the family." And that's
Right.
one of the key things of knowing that you are in a good church environment, is when you walk in the door and you feel like immediately like you're a part of the family, that you're
Right.
welcomed, that you're loved on, that you're made to feel special, that you're made to feel accepted. All the things that you talked about that you felt that were lacking. Like, I'm not feeling
Hmm.
that same kind of acceptance. I'm not feeling that same kind of love, but these people are showing me that. And it was like once you got a taste of it, you wanted more of it. You were craving it. And
Right.
that's the other thing that, what I want our listeners to understand is that why it's so important to be in a relationship with God is because even if it's new to you, it's one of those things that once you get a taste of it, once it, once it hits your taste bud, so to speak, spiritually speaking, you naturally crave more of it. You're naturally wanting to see more and experience more of it. That's just how it works. So all you have to do is take those first steps in going to where he is so that you can experience who he is and what he represents and how much he loves you. And that's what I sense that you and your sister were feeling in that moment. So it's not surprising to me that, like you said, I ran to the front to give my life to Christ. I was, this was church was not something that I felt forced to go to, that unfortunately a lot of young kids may feel that way. It was like an extracurricular activity. It was fun to me. I wanted to soak up as much of it as I possibly could because I knew I was in the right place. I knew this is where I was supposed to be. Um, and then it's interesting because I use for our show title today, of course I use the title of your book, Teaching Under the Influence. And I'm thinking to myself as we're having this conversation, it was almost like you were under the influence, but you were not under the influence of alcohol, not under the influence of a drug, but you were under the influence of the Holy Spirit. You were under the influence of God. And being
Yes.
under the influence, you were being taught, you were being fed. He was pouring into you everything that you needed to know, preparing you
Right.
again for the place and the moment and the platform that you're at today. So I think that's a beautiful testament of what you just shared here, and I hope our listeners are really understanding how this thing works and how no matter how you might feel isolated or abandoned or set aside, that we serve a God that loves you that much, that can instantaneously turn your whole world around just in your willingness, in your desire to come close to him, to meet him, to embrace him, and just let him do the rest. and and,
Right.
and that's what I see him do. I'm visualizing you being this young girl, and him and God just pouring into you. I can feel it in your words and in your emotions, that this is what that experience was truly like for you. So I appreciate again your transparency in sharing that, because we need to hear that this is not something that's made up. This is not fabricated. This is a very real thing that can happen for any of you, no matter what your background is, no matter what people made you feel like, or how you might have thought of even of yourself. Um, God will, if you didn't know beforehand, He will remind you of what your value and your worth is. That you do come from a royal line, and that you should understand that and know it for yourself, so that when you get to that point, it doesn't matter what other people think, or what other people got to say about you or whatever. That doesn't matter, because you know who you belong to, whose you are. You understand it at a much higher, heightened level. So again, I appreciate you sharing that. This is definitely a powerful testimony that you're sharing today. Um.
I'm going to reflect
So.
back to teaching under the influence. The
Uh
pastor
huh.
had been a teacher. And so he taught differently to me than traditional pastor. He taught like a teacher because that's who he was. He was a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, the very clear because he had an education degree and he had been a band director. And anyway, how to, living under the influence and then teaching under the influence is easy because that's how you.
Yes, yes, and I love that, and I love the approach of the pastor, because again, anybody who's been exposed or attempted on your own to to understand God's word, to truly delve into it, it's not an easy text to comprehend. And so when you're under the leadership of a pastor who, like you said, just doesn't preach to me but teaches me, helps me to break it down in small edible bites that I can not only absorb but that
Mhm.
I can apply right away to my life. That makes all the difference in the world. I don't need somebody standing in front of me that's just trying to impress me as to their oratory skills, or how many scriptures
Mhm.
they can drop off of memory and all of that. It puts on a great show, but when you're trying to build your relationship with Christ, you're not there for the show. You're there to
Right.
learn. You're there to be taught. You're there to be fed. You're there to be poured into, so that you can not only can you apply that to your day-to-day walk, but you're now being equipped to where you can begin to pour into other people as well. So it's a transferring of the
Mhm.
knowledge. Just as you were taught, you can now teach somebody else. You can now share who God is and what that relationship is all about with somebody else. But you wouldn't be able to do that if you didn't come under the influence of a teacher who was pouring into
Mhm.
you the way that you had an opportunity to be poured into. So that's good stuff. That's good stuff. Um, so so Sandra, again, very powerful testimony that you shared, and obviously you had to deal with some very challenging times in life that not everybody can say that they had to deal with. But as is the situation with storms, sometimes storms can be very heightened and very extreme in nature, and then sometimes storms can just come in the form of just lifing, just the day-to-day
Mhm.
nuances that we deal with. And so with that said, I'm curious to know from you is, when you do find yourself facing a challenging time, again, whether it's something major or it's just the minor day-to-day type of nuances that we deal with, what is your process? What is the routine that you like to do that kind of works best for you when you're having one of those days and you're trying to work through that challenge or that difficult situation that you're facing? What does that look like when you go through it?
So when I'm going through challenging, I don't turn off. Like I'm praying all, constantly talking to the Lord. Also, make sure first thing I get up in that I'm talking to the Lord, so that my mind is straight when I start. Because I found that when I used to just get up, mm-mm, just was bombarded by things that would just take my mind to place. And so I have to make sure that I get focused with the word and with God when I say, because if I will be in trouble. Um, you said if I'm having a difficult weekly, I have like this little list, and I write down what I'm believing God for, what I'm trusting God for. So I write down affirmations that I've created for myself, and I weekly. So again, that my mind is straight. And then also I put down to do list of things, following that. I also write that went well that week and things I need to work on,
Hmm.
so that I am constantly evaluating myself.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Hmm.
I love that because what I'm hearing from you is you're not somebody who, when you think about dealing with the storms and challenges of life, you're not waiting for the storm to arrive and then start doing the work to handle that situation at hand. You are preparing in advance on a daily basis to position yourself, to equip yourself in such a way that when that storm happens, because if you know anything about storms, we don't have the ability to predict, unlike the weather. We don't have the ability to predict when that storm is going to arrive, nor do we have the ability to predict how intense that storm is going to be. So
Hmm.
it's really important to do things like you're speaking of, which is I prepare in advance. I keep myself in a good space, in a right mind, so that when if and when it happens, because it really is not even a matter of if, but a matter of when it happens. I'm already armored up. Yeah, I've got my
Hmm.
full armor of God on. I've prepared my heart and my mind to face whatever challenge comes my way, to the point to where when I take that hit, it's not a hit that takes me out of the game. It doesn't knock me out. It may bump me momentarily. It may shake me up a little bit, but I'm able to still hold my footing, hold my ground, and be in a position to where now, after I've kind of composed myself, whatever that takes. Sometime it might take, a scream. Sometime it may take a few tears. But once I've had that moment, I can now hear from God as to, okay, Lord, guide my steps. How do I need to handle this particular situation that's before me? Because I understand I can't do it alone. I understand that I'm not expected to carry all of that weight and all of that burden of whatever this storm is by myself. I can trust in you. I can rely upon you to be my guiding, my eyes and my ears to navigate me through whatever it is that I'm facing, be it major or minor. And so I love that you do what you do, and then of course the end part of it is the accountability piece. I love how you say, you know what? I try to keep track of the things that I'm doing well, the things that have gone appropriately for me, and then I'm putting down the things that I need to work on. So again,
Mhm.
so there's that self accountability that you're putting into place, which is in many ways, and a lot of people don't think of it like this. That's a part of self care when you hold yourself accountable. When you identify the fact that, you know what, I'm not perfect. I fall
Mhm.
short. I make mistakes. I don't always have it figured out. There's some areas that I could do better in. And then there's some areas
Right.
that I'm doing quite well in, and I need to maintain that momentum. So for anybody that's tuning in and you're trying to
Mhm.
figure out, like, what do I do? What's a healthy, appropriate way for me to handle those storms and challenges of life? You gave a very good blueprint of what can be done, some examples of some things that can be done to keep you in that right mind, that right focus, that right framework. So when that storm does come, because it will come, you're going to have those
Mhm.
seasons throughout the course of your life. You're able to go to battle. You're able to go to battle as best as you can, but also
Right.
knowing that you have a God that's covering you, that's with you, along with, that's coming along with you in this battle, that you're not in it alone, and that you're going to be okay. And if that's not enough convincing, once you get into that practice, all you have to do is take a moment to reflect on, well, what happened with the last storm that I had?
Mhm.
Was I able to work through that? Was he there for me then? And what about the one before then? Oh, and then let's not forget about the one that happened, that year and or that month. I surely didn't know how I was
Mhm.
going to get through that, but here I am. I'm still in my right
Right.
mind. I'm still up. I'm still in an upright position. I made it through. So why should I expect anything different to happen this time around? And we're not talking about something that happened by chance or by luck, but it's by God's grace, by His protection, by His mercies, by His covering. But it also requires us to do our part, which is the things that you talked about. Having that moment where you prepare yourself from the moment you open your eyes in the morning. You said, I don't just jump up and start my day. I make sure that I prepare myself for the day. I stay prepared for the day. I stay prepared for
Mhm.
the week, for the month. And so those are all great things that you spoke of that I think are very valuable for our listeners to take away from and apply immediately. They can apply to their respective lives if they're not already doing so. So again, I appreciate you sharing that. So Sandra, as you reflect back
Mhm.
on all that, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think that
Did you want to say
coming
something?
from a traumatic background, for me, seem that hard. Whereas other
Mm,
people might be like, oh my gosh, it just doesn't to me. There were often times where I was
yeah.
like a team lead of teachers, and where they would be freaking out, I wouldn't be. I'm like, this is really not big of a deal to me. You've been left by your mom
Mm-hmm.
for days, and you how to make things work. It's kind of my normal. It just doesn't. It's not as hard. It's like you just have to jump into action. Bad happens. I can't, and you chime in, but I can't just sit here and cry and be paralyzed. Next action I'm going to take. Sadly, as a kid, I found out, okay, Sandra, these tears not going to work, you're gonna have to move on. Even if you do have to cry, cry and move, because you
Mm,
can't just be paralyzed. Because for me, nobody's going to come and help me. So you got to move.
absolutely, absolutely, and again, this is why I said earlier how important it is for us to reflect back on the beginning of the journey. You know how important it is for you to kind of piece together, why did I have to go through what I had to go through? It wasn't comfortable, it wasn't convenient, it was on many days it was painful to you. Like you said, I shed tears, I felt sorry for myself, I felt like, why is this happening to me? You know, but yet fast forwarding to today, you're now in a mindset, in a mind frame to where it's not that you don't still have challenges in life or that things don't get to you, but you don't go into freak out mode about it, because you say, you know what,
Mm-hmm.
he prepared me early on in childhood for moments like to for the moment of now, because now when
Mm-hmm.
something happens, what I used to do, I don't do that anymore. It doesn't overwhelm me to the point where I'm just, crawled up in a corner somewhere and, feeling like the world is coming to an end and there's just no hope. Now I have hope. Now I have a brighter outlook, even in the midst of a storm. I can see through that darkness the light of the sun is going to break
Mm-hmm.
through on the other end. All I know is I just got to keep pressing forward. I just got to keep fighting through,
Mm-hmm.
and of course along the way, trusting God and knowing in the end that eventually those dark clouds are going to move to the side. The
Mm-hmm.
sun is going to shine again, and I'm going to be all right. But that's a process, So again,
Right.
for my listeners, I'm not trying to suggest to you that this is something that happens overnight. But if that's the moment that you've been in, where every time something doesn't go your way or life doesn't pan out the way that you do, that you tend to just kind of crawl into a shell of yourself, and again, kind of go into this pity party mode, so to speak. You have to, again, we're not minimizing you not having an opportunity to let it out. Just don't stay
Right.
stuck there. Don't just
Right.
stay. Don't let it consume you. You do have permission to let that out.
Mm-hmm.
It's in fact it's essential that you do,
Right.
because there are people who do hold
Mm-hmm.
it in and they're actually causing more harm to themselves than they are helping themselves. So let it out. Have your moment,
Mm-hmm.
but then pull it together and say, okay, now Lord, where do you want me to go through this with this? How should I proceed? Let me put my emotions to the side so that I can hear from you, so that I can see the path that you're laying forth for me to follow. That's how you grow spiritually, and that's how you do a much better job at handling those storms of life when they come. That's why you're able to speak the way you are about it, because it's not an arrogant thing, it's not a cockiness thing. It's just you grow. It's your growth. It's a sign of your
Mm-hmm.
spiritual growth that, you know what, hey, I know something's gonna happen at some point at some time, and it's probably not gonna be it's not gonna be convenient. It's not gonna feel good, but you know what?
Mm-hmm.
I know who still loves me. I know who still cares for me.
Right.
I know all the times before that everything worked itself out. I know that he's still undefeated. And so
Mm-hmm.
as long as I'm on the winning team, I'm going to win every time. No matter what it looks like to others on the outside looking in, no matter how impossible it may seem, nothing is too big for him. And so that's you are a walking living testimony of that, and which is what makes your story so valuable, so important, so necessary to be told, because other people may not be at that place just yet, but they need to know that this is actually a possible realistic thing that can occur in your life if you just make that pivot, make that shift that you need to make, which begins with the relationship with God. So
Mm-hmm.
good stuff that you're sharing there. Definitely good stuff. So Sandra, if you had the opportunity, as you reflect back on all of life's experiences, good, bad, or otherwise, if you had the opportunity to sit across the table from the younger Sandra, the Sandra who used to feel like this secret, like this forgotten, abandoned one, who had to fend for herself and do things that no young child should have to do on their own, but you had to step up and be a woman way sooner than you needed to be, when you should still have been enjoying life as a little girl. Um, what would you say to the younger Sandra that you feel like would have been essential to help her navigate life a little bit better, maybe handle the challenges and the storms of life a little bit better, or just again thinking about the people who are tuning in, that are having similar struggles that they feel like you used to feel, about that sense of isolation and that loneliness, and it's just me against the world by myself with no help. What would you say to those listeners as well as to the younger Sandra that you think would be essential to help them make that next step to healing and overcoming the challenges of life?
It's all a part of who you are called, and we don't understand it when we are younger. But now I know that I am a generational curse breaker. So
Mm.
when you show up that person, you show up differently. You show up asking when you're way too young, even thinking that way. But it's your calling, and it has to do with curses of your family. And so some of it, I mean, not some of it, it's heavy. It's heavy. I would tell that to make it and you're going to do well. That's what I would tell myself. And the people that you are they're called you, they're assigned to you. And eventually you will see why you connected with those things that you desire. You don't know how you're going to get there because no one in my family had gone to college. So I knew I wanted to be a teacher, but getting there, no one in my family could. I heard of scholarships, but I didn't know how to get them. But man, God,
Hmm.
I paid zero for college, nothing,
Wow.
zero. God showed me how to. I bet you're like, how does that work?
This is powerful.
So, do you want
Yeah.
me to tell you that how that happened? So, pastor used to be a upward bound counselor. So he knew how to get aid and scholarships. And so me attending that church, I did not see at that time who he was supposed to be. And so, anyways, at a point, that's another part of my story. He and his wife adopted me and my sister. I was 16. She was 17. I was 15. She was 17. And so other pastors told him not to do it. And now that I am the age that why they would say not to do it. Um, but I remember asking him, why did you do it? And he said, I had no choice. God told me to do it, so I knew I had to do it. So I remember when I was adopted and staying with them with the financial aid paperwork and scholarship paperwork. I filled everything out and it covered everything for college. And I didn't have to pay for
Hmm.
anything. I paid zero.
Wow.
I had so much money that I bought with the refund from the scholarship money.
Hmm.
That's just God.
Yeah.
When I went to college, it was like for the first time, I got to just live and not be concerned about anything. Does that make sense? And just to different places. And anyway, That's just God and how He is to you. It's like just do what you're supposed to do, and God will take care of you.
Love that.
I started
Love
paying
that.
tithes
And
when I joined. I was in the sixth grade. I have never not paid tithes.
mm,
Never. Anyways,
wow.
and I went to college 5 years, not four. And even that
Hmm.
scholarship, they continued to give it to me. Even it took me 5 years to graduate. I did not, when I went to school, I was where I went to school. They weren't preparing us for college. So that first year was how to be in college and learning the rigor of being a college student. So
But you were being taught under the influence, and you made
I
it through.
was
every every level, every challenge that you had to
exactly for
face,
sure.
you were under the
Yes.
influence, but you were under the right influence, and
Hmm.
that matters. That matters, and again, you are a living
It
example of what it
does.
looks like when you follow the right lead, when you're following the
Right.
right guide. In this case,
And I
God Himself, and
don't
so
argue with the word. I mean, if it says pay your tithes, then I'm paying them. I mean, I just am.
hey, it's good stuff. That's good stuff. Wow. Well, Sandra, this has been a phenomenal, awesome conversation. I have thoroughly enjoyed our time together. As I stated at the start of the show, I look forward to being blessed by your story, and you have not disappointed. You've blessed me, you've blessed my listeners, and I'm so grateful and thankful that we had the opportunity to connect, and for you to be able to pour out to us the way that you have in such a transparent and authentic and genuine, way. And again, can't say enough how thankful I am for that and for you. Um, and for my listeners, if you were blessed by our time together, I mean, you should be shouting. You should be shouting to the rafters because you heard a powerful story today. But before we let you go, Sandra, I do want to take this opportunity to celebrate you, to love on you, to lift you up. And so, if you got anything that's going on right now or coming up down the road, we want to know all about it. How people can support, follow along, keep in touch with you, access any of your products or services. So please do let us know, Sandra, what you got going on that we need to be tuned in and tapped into, that we need to be well beyond this podcast episode, that we need to be connected with you on, because you are definitely doing God's work and doing it at a very in a very mighty way, blessing the masses. So let us know what's going on with you, so we can tap in accordingly.
So just recently did my launch party for book Teaching Under the Influence. And so now I am connecting teachers who are teaching in the traditional setting. Teacher resources. I say resources, just somebody to listen to them, as well as them some step tools in order to move in the classroom as a Christian teacher. Um, Now, people who teach for a while, we know how to love. There is the separation of church and state. So you're not really supposed to do that. How if you're that's just the way you show up. It's just like the people who aren't Christian looking at the news, and there's a lot of things going on with teachers who are doing things that are inappropriate. I would love to be able to share some tools, some tips on how to move forward, as well as I have friends, other teacher friends who would love to encourage teachers who are still called to do that. I did it for 2 years. I thought I only last for about, but I did last for 24. I just love educators and keep them lifted as long as they want to continue teaching. And so we're meeting on Zoom and just encouraging each other. And I'm doing Zoom because I know teachers, if they have kids, husband, all the things, we're busy. We don't tip in a place because we have so many things to do, as well as I will send you the electronic version email. And so then they still get tools and the encouragement that you need. So please reach out to any teachers who are feel like they're on the struggle bus. And usually this time, October, November, teachers are ready to quit. That's
Mm.
normal. So you keep them lifted and encouraged. And if this is your first year and you feel like quitting already, that's normal. Certain parts of the year, how you feel. And the thing about being a
Okay.
teacher in dysfunction, whatever is going on at home, it shows up. I didn't know that
Mm.
before I decided to be a teacher. And then it just all just started showing up in my classroom. I was prepared. Since I came from dysfunction, I was prepared.
That's great. That is great. So where should people go if they want to purchase your book or
So
or find out when you do your Zoom
you can,
sessions?
it
Where's the
is
best
on
place to check that out?
Amazon. It's on my website. My website is my name, SandraAnnWalters.com. So you can get it from my website. You can also get Amazon. If you are interested in the electronic copy, the ebook, I'm going to be doing a on my Facebook. So follow is my name, Sandra Walters, and then that way you can kind of support me as far as the algorithms on. Because you kind of learn how to do all the things in order for people to even know that you exist. So
So true.
also you can find me on Instagram, our inspiring stories. Am I
Okay,
good or
okay.
anything else?
Y-
Okay.
Oh, hey, you're great. You are great. And again to my listeners, she's told you how to keep in touch with her, how to get her book. And definitely if there are any educators tuning in, this is somebody you want to tap into. She's clearly got the right mindset and understanding the rigors and the challenges of teaching. But also understanding that, teachers, again, at the end of the day, they are humans. They go through, they have their
Mhm.
challenges and they have their struggles, and they need people like the Sandras of the world to be able to pour into and come alongside them and let them know that all of their work, all of their efforts are, this is not a waste, that this is that they're walking in their gift,
Mhm.
walking in their purpose, and not to give up. And I think about teaching not just in this
Mhm.
traditional educational classroom setting. It can, you can be a teacher in corporate America, in government. If you're in any type of leadership position where you are training and pouring into people, I'm sure that there are nuggets that she has in her books, and in her Zoom messaging and things of that nature that's going to be beneficial to you. So don't feel like you just can only just be a teacher to be blessed by what she has to offer. So definitely keep that in mind, and it's definitely inspirational to hear you speak on this, because I know, just even when I think about my daughter, she is, desires to be a teacher, and she's going through that process right now of figuring out what college she's going to go to, and
Okay.
so it's great to see and meet somebody like you, and hear what you're saying, because it gives me hope for her, that she'll have a similar experience as you have had, and the joys of teaching, and pouring into young people, as well. So this is great stuff, great stuff. So again, Sandra, thank you so much. And then to my listeners, if you've enjoyed our broadcast tonight, please subscribe, please share, please comment, please like, because this is what the Blessings in the Streets podcast is about. We're about encouraging, uplifting, pouring into others, being transparent and vulnerable, letting you know that hey, we don't have it all figured out. We understand that we everybody goes through stuff. Everybody has challenges, everybody has storms, but guess what? There is a way, there is a path for you to break through, for you to overcome what may seem insurmountable on some days. And that is through first and foremost through you having a relationship with God. You don't have to do life on your own. You don't have to do it by yourself. He loves you unconditionally. He wants nothing but the best for you. He's there for you in the good and in the bad times. You just need to trust and lean on him and depend upon him. Make him the center of your life. If this is not a relationship that you currently have, today would be a mighty fine day for you to make that decision. And I promise you, it'll be the best decision that you'll ever make. Everything that we've talked to you about tonight, definitely in regards to the relationship with God, this is not something that we heard about. This is something that we know from personal experience firsthand. And so He has enough love to go around for everybody. All you have to do is want to be a part of that experience, and He'll be more than happy. It'll be His he would love nothing more to be there for you and to love on you as only God can. So always keep that in mind. And so again, remember here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and I thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, you keep fighting that good fight. Keep leaning on God. Keep trusting in Him. Don't allow other people to dictate who you are and what you are and the value and the worth that you have. Know that you come from a line of royalty. Know who you belong to. You belong to Him, and He created you uniquely as you are to live out the purpose that He specifically designed just for you. So embrace that, walk in that, and just allow Him to not only be a blessing to you, but to equip you to be a blessing to others. That He is specifically intended for you to come alongside and to be your audience, to be your focal point throughout the course of this life. So until next time, you take care of yourselves. Have a great rest of your evening, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Take care of yourselves until then.